Welcome, everyone, to the library budget address. My name is Catherine Penkert. I am the library director here for St. Paul Public Library. Thank you. I'm going to do my very best to project my voice to this room, but this isn't my usual gig up front. This is the mayor's gig, so give me a break if I'm still learning. Thank you so much for being here with us today. 1 year ago, many of you were with us at Rondo Library for this address, and we shared a very big idea that day. And we said, we in St. Paul, we want to eliminate late fines in our libraries. And that day, we asked our library board and our community to invest in our ability to make that happen for St. Paul, for this community. And I am so proud to be standing here today. I represent 175 library staff, and we are here to share an update on how that's been going and how we've been able to make good on that investment. And if you see a library staff member today, can our staff raise hands? Thank you. We have staff in the room. You can pop in at the library on your way out, stop by any of our libraries in St. Paul, and please thank them, because this has been a year's worth of work to make this a seamless and, to be honest, joyful, fun transition for our libraries here in St. Paul. And with that, I would like to introduce Library Board Chair Jane Prince.
Thank you all. I am honored to serve as chair of the library board. It's the best gig on the city council. This year was especially thrilling as the library set to work on its new strategic direction and eliminated overdue fines, an idea that bubbled up from our incredible staff. In its new value statements, the library declared its steadfast belief in learning, curiosity, connection, and belonging. I see these values every time I set foot in one of our 13 branches, or when I see the bookmobile out and about at local schools, senior housing complexes, and other community organizations. Each library board meeting brings something new, another way our libraries serve all of our people. We heard how library staff members are training to become better informed in trauma-sensitive practices and creating supportive library spaces for those in need. We learned about Pop-Up St. Paul, a library effort to lend community organizing kits to the public, from projectors and PA systems to interpreter devices and materials to host a block party. And we heard from library staff members who are leading culturally relevant library program for our many diverse communities, including Somali, Latinx, Hmong, Oromo, Amharic, and Karen. I am so proud of our libraries and thankful for the staunch support of our whole St. Paul community. Now I'd like to introduce, coincidentally, one of my constituents in Dayton's Bluff. I'd like to invite Library Associate Jennifer Mason to share a story about how the elimination of library fines has made an impact.
My name's Jenny Mason. I've worked here at Arlington Hills for about 1.5 years. Before that, I worked at Rondo Library for a couple of years. And after I was asked to do this, I started talking to my coworkers and just to gather some ideas from them. And overwhelmingly, and it didn't surprise me at all, everybody is extraordinarily positive about the change. And among coworkers, our interactions with patrons have just gotten better. There's less stress and strain talking to patrons. And it's exciting to be able to tell patrons that it's okay if you forget to bring something back for a day, or they check out a stack of 25 movies and they're 1 day late. It's not $25 automatically on their card anymore. It's okay to be a little forgetful. And so I just wanted to tell a story that's representative of a lot of stories that we have. This last week, a mother was coming in with her kids and wanting to check out some books and movies with her kids. And this mother was checking out stuff for her children, but it was also stuff for herself. And I asked her then, well, would you like your own library card? And she's like, well, I have a ton of fines on my card. And so I'm like, well, let's check. So I went to her account, looked up her name, and her fines had been eliminated. And her card had expired like 2 years prior. She had avoided the library that long. And she was surprised and happy. And she's like, yes, I definitely am going to renew my card today. She actually needed a new one. So she got her replacement card. She checked out a bunch of stuff. Her kids got stuff. It was just a really, really lovely story and interaction. And again, this is stuff I get to do every day. And so many people are surprised still. I mean, for us, it's old hat. We've been doing this for 6 months. We figure everybody should know about it because it's been well advertised, it's talked about a lot, social media. But every day people are surprised and thrilled that they don't have to worry about this. We do explain carefully that you still have to bring things back. There is a replacement fee if you don't. So it's not like we're giving away a bunch of free stuff, but you're not getting dinged for being a few days late. I also have to explain that you can take your library card. We're part of a really lovely, larger MELSA system. And so you can take your St. Paul library card and take it over to Ramsey County, of which we are a separate system, or Hennepin County, or, and you can register your local card over in another system. But I do have to tell them we are the only fine-free system. We hope other people follow us soon. But to give them that warning that even though they return them here at St. Paul, those materials go by their rules. But yeah, I'm excited to be able to speak to this, and thank you very much for being such an advocate for the libraries.
And it is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce our wonderful Mayor, Melvin Carter, to present the library budget and what's in store for libraries in 2020.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us today. I am excited to be here. I'm excited for this conversation. And I have to tell you, just generally excited about what's going on in our St. Paul public libraries. And I can tell by the energy in this room, and certainly by the quotes and statistics on this board, that I'm not the only one. Because we're doing something special here in our St. Paul public libraries. 1 year ago, as we've shared, we announced this big idea, this big proposal that we can have libraries without late fines. And in fact, we can have better libraries that serve our communities better and invite 43,000 people back into our communities without late fines. That policy, and I want to be really clear, and I appreciate your thanks to me, but that could not have happened had it not been for the frontline library staff listening to what people who walk into our libraries every day say to them, for those frontline library staff feeling like they have a line to have a conversation with their supervisor and with their director and with their mayor to say, you know what, this doesn't meet the test of our values. We can do better. And I'm just really appreciative. You know, as I think about this time last year, I was nervous about how people would respond when we made that announcement. And it was exciting that people responded in the way that they did. But it's even more exciting to me to see the outcomes that we've produced in such a short amount of time. You know, change like this is not a small thing. The first outcome that we produced is this. You know, our original plan, I'm gonna let you in on a secret, our original plan was to phase this shift in over time, over a matter of a couple of years, which frankly would have given our staff the time to be able to implement all of the things and all of the work that it required to do. As we got into it and as it just became clear, this isn't something we want to phase in patiently over time. This is something we want to do right now. That meant we got a chance to cut the ribbons and reopen and re-welcome people back into our libraries. And it also meant that our library staff got a chance to do 4 years worth of work in a matter of 4 months. Would you please, please, please join me in just giving a huge round of applause for all the city staff that made this possible. You know, sometimes, especially when you're serving children, and I like to share with people that same thing. Thank you so much, by the way, for your story and for sharing that with us. I like to share with people that same thing. That, you know what, if you rip the pages out of a book, or if you take it and never bring it back, or if you bring it back destroyed, you still get the privilege of paying to replace that book. But if a kid brings a book back on Thursday instead of a Wednesday, I don't want their dollar. And that's the way I explain this change to folks. And you know, the thing that I've learned when you work with children is that sometimes when you work with children, you get a chance to see years later, decades later, the ways in which that work, those seeds that you planted, sprouted and blossomed. Every now and then, we get to see right now. And it's exciting to me the way that your work, the way that our library staffs work on this policy to make the case for it, and also to do all the administrative work that had to be done to actually see it through, has just paid off. More people are checking out books and materials across our system. At this library, Arlington Hills, and at Rondo Library, circulation jumped nearly 20%. And yes. And in 6 months since making this change, we've seen double-digit circulation increases in 5 of our city's libraries. I literally get chills thinking about that. More people are getting library cards. Our new library card registration is up more than 8% and climbing. And the people whose cards were formerly blocked have come back to use the library. I know that we've shared with you, and you can see on this board, that over 43,000 physical items have been checked out this year, in the first 6 months of this year, on cards that 7 months ago were blocked for late fees. That's exciting for me, yes. As should always be the case, other communities across the country are following St. Paul's leadership. Dallas Public Library, San Francisco Public Library, Spokane Public Library, and many others have since eliminated late fines and have looked to our St. Paul Public Library for guidance. Seattle Public Library is considering a move to fine-free, and our close neighbor, Ramsey County Public Library, has proposed eliminating fines for youth. Library staff members drove this change. Last year, we invited some of those staff members to share their experiences navigating fines with patrons and their hardship that the fines placed both on our members of our staff and on members of our community. It's helpful for me after hearing those stories last year, and I'm sure for those of you who were here with us last year, to have Jennifer Mason come back and share with us this year's version of the story. So would you give Jennifer a round of applause? This year, we're again focusing our library on eliminating barriers to access. Many people in our communities lack access to basic necessities. As we approached this budget cycle, we did it the way we do everything. We engaged community members, brought them into the process and said, how do you this isn't my money. It's not our money. It's not even the city's money. This is our money. And how do we want to prioritize our investments? What are the values that we want our investments to portray? The top 2 things that we heard through a dozen events in every ward of the city, engaging business leaders, diverse community members, students, young people, neighborhood leaders. The top two things that we heard in every part of the city were housing and mental health. And we saw a unique opportunity to use our libraries to address these issues. As you know, people often turn to the library for safe haven and information on where to go when they're faced with social and economic barriers. 18 months ago, Ruby Rivera from the Wilder Foundation joined St. Paul Public Library as our first full-time social worker to connect people with critical resources and consult with library staff members on challenging situations and behaviors that can arise in our library buildings due to stress. As a pilot project, Ruby's work was generously funded by our community partners, including the F.R. Bigelow Foundation, Hugh J. Anderson Foundation, the Minnesota Department of Education, which offered federal funding from the Library Services and Technology Act. And all of these partners were sought out and coordinated by the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library, and also the Wilder Foundation, renowned for its ability to develop and deliver community-informed and culturally relevant services. This was a steadfast partner in creating and operationalizing this program. Please give our partners a round of applause. You know, it's a blessing to have partners like that who can help us build programs, who can help us test things like that, who can help us pilot things like that, and who can help us prove their worth so that we can say to our taxpayers, so that we can say to our public, so that we can say to our library users, this is something worth our public investment. It soon became clear that having a full-time social worker in our libraries is essential. It just helps community members more effectively access the public and nonprofit resources that are available to them and provide service at the exact moment and the exact location where people need help. It helps our library staff members create trauma-sensitive environments, increase their confidence of available social service resources and tools, promote healing, and maintain welcoming library spaces. So since March of 2018, Ruby has consulted with 405 individual patrons. She spends an average of 80 hours a month providing direct service to patrons and has made 143 referrals to other service organizations, connecting people to the resources that they need, the resources that exist in our community. She's saving lives. She relayed a story recently about helping a woman and her 2-year-old child escape a domestic violence situation. That's what's happening in the St. Paul Public Library. We've always known that our business was connecting people to information. And we're taking that role more seriously than ever. The woman came to Minnesota with her abuser, had no friends, family, or resources here. Ruby was able to work with them to find immediate shelter and continuing resources to get out of that situation. We won't stop that investment. In our 2020 library budget, I am pleased to propose $97,000 to fund a full-time, ongoing library social worker to continue this essential work. Did you know that one of the most checked out items in our St. Paul library system is our Wi-Fi hotspots? Did you know that you can check out Wi-Fi hotspots at our St. Paul public libraries? You can. Many of our St. Paul residents have little or no access to the internet at home. You can't do anything these days without access to the internet. It's critical to doing your homework. It's critical to checking to see if your kid did their homework. It's critical to finding a job or finding housing and every other critical thing we have to do as a community. The IRS even wants us to complete our taxes online. Access to the internet is critical to having a thriving life. In 2016, thanks to a one-time grant, the library launched a Wi-Fi lending program. When the grant ended, our library looked to continue to fund the program and to expand it due to the immense community need and the immense community demand that we were seeing from our residents. In this year's budget, I'm thrilled to propose more than $14,000 in investment to fund the library's Wi-Fi lending program on an ongoing basis. One more thing I want to share with you. When I think the week of my inauguration last year, as I was stepping into this role, I pulled Director Pinkert aside. And let me tell you, we have an incredible leader for our libraries in Director Pinkert. I pulled her aside and said, what if we had a Mayor's Book Club? And she said, well, yeah, there's other cities that are doing it. I said, yeah, I've seen that, but I think we could do it better. I think we could do a little bit more. What if instead of just saying, let's read a book together, what if we said, let's have some real cutting edge conversations, let's use a book to have real critical, cutting edge conversations. And she said, oh, you mean Reading Brave or something like that? I said, yeah, that sounds good. And we were able to expand our existing Read Brave program, again with a lot of work from our library staff, to say, we're not just gonna read a book. We're gonna discuss a critical issue. That issue for last year, as I know you all know, was housing. And we said, we want housing. And I said, here's a perfect idea. The book should be Evicted, this nonfiction book that was sweeping the nation about the housing challenges that families in Milwaukee face and families across our country face. And our library staff in their infinite wisdom looked at me and they said, well, that's a good idea. And they came back with a proposal that is incredible. Through Read Brave, our librarians curated a set of books that centered around a young adult novel called Burn, Baby, Burn, that included our nonfiction book, Evicted. And they also curated for us a set of children's books, of chapter books, of graphic novels, and just picture books. And let me tell you, those picture books are horrible. You will read them and go, why would anyone ever treat a baby fox this way? Read them if you dare. But they seeded an important conversation in our city about housing. And because of this notion of not just one book, but one idea, through many books, we were able to seed that conversation from every preschool to every grad school in our city. That's important. And people responded to Read Brave. The library, thousands of people participated. The library distributed 5,500 copies of the Read Brave titles through the community. 620 copies of the Read Brave children's books, Shelter, Rich, Crenshaw, and Yard Sale, were distributed to community partners, where more than 150 children and their parents attended a story time at Highland Park Library, where we read the children's books aloud together. I sat in on a discussion with the local book club who read the titles and marveled at the thousands of people who participated in Read Brave events, from creating hygiene kits for those in need to attending a seminar for landlords on how to rethink eviction. More than 1,000 people interacted with the library's civic lab on an on-site display with information, public polls, and a quiz about housing, providing city leaders with essential community feedback. And in partnership with another incredible organization that has served our libraries well, the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library, led by another incredible leader, Beth Burns. "50 book clubs across our city signed up to participate in Read Brave as well." Read Brave helps the city increase public awareness and engagement of the most challenging and complex issues of our time, issues that will affect all of our future. It demonstrates the unique capability of public libraries to to bring people together across similarities and differences for shared community experiences. Library staff have already been hard at work planning Read Brave 2020. I'm excited to announce that our 2020 Read Brave theme is our climate crisis. Climate change is the defining issue of our time, and we're at a defining moment. As a global community, we must come together to understand the effects of climate change now and in the future, and to develop solutions. In St. Paul, we will begin by reading Brave. Let me tell you this. Last month I was in Washington, D.C. testifying in the Senate, and just last week I was in Minneapolis, even further away, with Mayor Frey and former Vice President Al Gore discussing climate crisis. When we talk about climate crisis, when I talk about climate crisis, people sometimes get surprised because when you think about climate crisis, not everybody thinks about St. Paul. Not everybody thinks about the Midwest or cities like St. Paul or Minneapolis. But you know what we do know? We know that our streets are more torn up than we've ever seen them before because of the increased freeze-thaw cycles that we're seeing from our changing winters. We know that we saw a $1 million rock slide last year where 400,000 pounds of rock landed on Wabasha Avenue. You're aware of that, right, Councilmember Naker? We know that our river, our Mississippi River, 3 of the highest 10 flood stages we've ever seen recorded on our Mississippi River. 3 of them have happened in the last decade. We know that our climate is changing, but we know what's going on with our electricity bills and our energy bills as well. We know that our lives are changing, but we don't always necessarily connect them to our climate crisis. That's one of the reasons using our climate crisis as our Read Brave topic is so critical. So this year, we're pleased to welcome new partners to the table, including the Science Museum of Minnesota, which will help with programming and content around our climate crisis. Thank you. I know we have members from the Science Museum here. Would you wave your hand so we can talk to you? Robbie. I couldn't think of a better partner, and I appreciate you guys plugging in and being involved in this work with us moving forward. Look for Read Brave titles to be announced in November. Once again, our librarians are curating an entire collection of books around this topic, from picture books and early readers to a young adult novel and an adult nonfiction book. I can't wait to see the children's picture books they choose this year. From going fine-free and creating trauma-sensitive libraries to hotspot lending and pushing forward with Read Brave, none of this would be possible without the incredible work and support of our library staff. Please join me in giving them a round of applause and just high-fiving one of those library staff as you walk out the door and telling them thank you for your work. I appreciate all that you do, our staff, our partners. I appreciate your support. To the friends, thank you for being there year in and year out for so long to help lift up and push forward our goals of our St. Paul Public Library system. And to our library board members, it's great to see you. Councilmember Naker, Councilmember Prince, Councilmember Jalali Nelson. It's great to see you. Am I missing someone? Make sure I'm not missing anybody in the room. I appreciate you guys being there. All of the city staff in the room, our budget staff is here, our deputy mayor, Jamie Tincher, is here, and certainly our library director. I share with people often, and our fire chief, thank you for being here as well. I share with people often that this work, no matter what kind of models we see from other places, that the work of governance has to be a team sport. It doesn't work otherwise. And I have to tell you, I sleep well every night, and I am encouraged every morning I wake up knowing that we in St. Paul have an incredible team. Thank you very much.